Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsors this week are Oracle and Factor, more about them later. And I'm joined by Wes Hilliard for what I'm afraid it looks like it's going to have to be the long-promised, long-overdue musical episode. Because Wes, nothing has happened in Apple news this week. Not a single thing. What is the world coming to? Do you have anything, or are you willing to start us off with perhaps a little song?
No, but nobody wants to hear that. There is a lot going on. If I knew a song with lyrics, Something in the Air, I would probably start there. But Tim Cook, Apple's biggest leaker, announced that yet again we're expecting some products this week. And turns out there was two things in the air and then nothing else air related, but they were there nevertheless. So interesting week of little announcements.
I did actually think he fooled me with that tweet because something in the air. We knew the MacBook Air was coming. We thought the iPad Air was coming, but not yet, kind of thing. And I'll admit this, I freeze framed the 6-second video, and you have that shot of something flying by the word Air and kind of cutting into it. It looked like a MacBook. I was convinced it was a MacBook, and then they come out with the iPad Air. But then the next day, the MacBook Air. So it's a roller coaster kind of promotion thing. What happened to the old days of live presentations where you could take your time?
And interestingly, no video component, period. No ad, no nothing has shown up yet about these new products.
No, I think it's a sign we're in the TikTok world now. Live presentations gone. Very well produced videos gone. The shorter commercials gone, and just Tim Cook's 6-second long promo for it. That's it. That's all we get now.
This show would be 6 seconds long because honestly, it's a chipset update. The end. We're done. We can go home, and that's the end of the show. Thank you for listening. I told you,
I need music. I need songs in my life. But okay, I'm going to bet. We need to cover what's come out. But I just want to start by I bet money that you are not buying any of the new updates. Am I right?
Oh yeah. No, I don't need anything. I have the Mac Mini that's mostly out of use. I mean, I'm using it to record right now. Right. But otherwise, I haven't touched it in between recordings in a while. I need to get on here and tinker with some things, but yeah, time has escaped me.
Right, we're talking about a new iPad and a new Mac, and you started him with a Mac, and I thought he is coming over to my side, and then no. You started about to say it's disused. But the iPad Air has no interest to you as an iPad Pro user, presumably.
Definitely not. I mean, it's a good product, but it's one of those that, I could probably buy for a family member if I wanted to get them an iPad. But honestly, once Apple Intelligence comes to the base iPad, that one would probably be the better option. But we'll get into that. I do want to point out, interestingly, the rumor cycle here has been so wrong this year, and primarily around Mark Gurman. I'm not sure what's going on there. I've proposed we need to reevaluate a little bit because last year he was a bit iffy on a couple of things, but mostly came through. But his rumor cycle starting from the fall to the spring of 2025, not really doing well. He expected the iPhone SE to come after the MacBook. The MacBooks were going to get updated early in the year, January, February. The orders are all wrong. He even came out before this event and said iPad Air later in the month, not tomorrow. And the only thing he got right in the last couple of weeks is the day before the announcement, after the embargoed press releases went out, he said, hey, there's a MacBook Air coming out tomorrow, which honestly felt a little silly for him to say because it was during an embargoed section of the press release. Maybe he wasn't in those meetings and someone leaked it to him, but still little weird approach there. But yeah, overall, whatever his insider information is, feels like his source has hit a weak point. Now, on products coming, great. He's been accurate. MacBook Air, iPad Air, but small details and release dates all falling apart. I mean, anyone could have predicted, Apple's going to update iPad Air after a year or so. The new iPad baseline needs to get an update eventually. But It doesn't have Apple Intelligence. It doesn't have the A17 Pro. The iPad Air does not have the M4 as he predicted. There's almost nothing here correct beyond the existence of the products.
Well, if we're going to diss people that have generally been very accurate in the past, as we record this today, Ming-Chi Kuo, the analyst, was giving out sales estimates for the iPhone Fold in 2027, and I'm starting to think there may not be a great deal of accuracy there either, whereas he used to be. You'd listen to him. So
Ming-Chi Kuo is, like Gurman, has a really strong history, but that's when he was working for, I forget, TF Securities or...
Oh, yes, something like that. Yeah.
He's now a blogger on Medium. I'm not sure what that means. I think he's making money because a lot of people click and link to his stuff, so he's doing something there, I guess, financially speaking. He posts almost every day, multiple posts, but it's all predictions about chipsets and TSMC and specific component sales, and we cover the stuff that has to do with iPhone. And when it comes to the supply chain, he's great. This company is going to make this chip this time. Usually perfect accuracy. Stuff when it comes to predictive, futuristic things, less so. And since he's left some of the more major firms, it seems as if he's making more predictions, like guesses, educated guesses, rather than leaks. And I wonder if Apple, now this is going way back, and we'd have to find the article, but Apple said openly, we're clamping down on leaks. We're going to start seeding fake leaks to find people who do it. We're going to start firing people who do this. And I'm fairly certain they found John Prosser's source back when he was more accurate. And there's a good chance that whoever's been talking to Gurman, because Gurman kept hinting it was someone higher up in the company. I think he might have burned his own source. But that and Ming-Chi Kuo's supply chain only getting weak examples of inferences, maybe leaking is Apple's finally tamped down on it in a way that's making it harder for this information to get out.
I suppose, given what you and I do, given what this podcast is all about, I should be unhappy with that. But I'm afraid I kind of like being surprised. You know?
It's a mixed bag. So Apple Insider doesn't thrive on leaks. Like, we wouldn't go out of business if leaks went away. We report on it because it's news. This person who has a history says this, and it's possible. And people are going to be talking about it, so we want to be part of the conversation. So we're not going to stop reporting on leaks, even if they become less accurate. That's why we came out with our rating system, so we can say, hey, this one doesn't sound so good. But hopefully readers are coming here more for our analysis, because outside of leaks, something that Gurman and Kuo both do with their reporting, something that we do because we're hopefully good at it, I think we're good at it, is we take all the information at hand and our history with Apple and our understanding of Apple and come out with the most probable scenarios for product launches and devices and future plans. I mean, if you've listened to the show long enough, you've heard me do exactly that. And my accuracy's been pretty strong. I get some things wrong. I understand that. I mean, again, I'm only going off of analysis and data. I don't have an internal source. But when it comes to things I understand especially well, like iPad, I knew that M4 wasn't coming to iPad Air the minute Gurman said it was. It didn't make sense logically. And we've had similar discussions around Macs and other iPads and iPhones. So we'll see how it all pans out. I'm glad you guys continue to trust us with this information, but leaking as a whole, it'll probably come back, with a force in the future as we see more leakers come out. More supply chain leaks. Kosutami still gets a hold of those EVT models, but I wonder if we need to reevaluate our existing leaker lineup, because Prosser's trying his best to get back into the scene. I'm not fully trusting it. But with Gurman and Kuo even being more and more inaccurate over time, perhaps we need to have a different approach. But that's a discussion for another time.
I can actually tell you the first bit of this is completely true. I was in like a WebEx Zoom meeting with Phil Schiller a few months ago. I was oddly starstruck actually when I suddenly saw he was on the call, and we spoke for like seconds. And he didn't tell me a single thing. So that didn't work out very well. But, I'm in there, clearly, for it. I could replace... Yeah, no, I'm the guy who thought the Apple car should come in blue, and that's why they didn't release it, because they couldn't get the right colours and things. So I wouldn't be listening to me. But how about this, that maybe... I mean, I don't, such a nebulous thought. I'm trying to join together the fact that we've had these new products, but also the lack of leaks, that nothing came out about them other than when they were due, more or less. And then, like you say, at the last minute. Is it that actually this set of products, as good as they are, aren't special enough, aren't new enough to have made a dent in leaks?
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's definitely some supply chain related stuff. No new cases, right? All the devices have the same external appearance. The chipsets are relatively the same. Even the M3 Ultra, we kind of heard about M3 Ultra before. This one was a Gurman leak that Apple was testing M4 and M3 products in a Mac Studio. I don't remember when that leak was, but it was like last year sometime. Mm-hmm. When we had thought M3 was just going to be gone at that point. It was a very odd rumor, and it came and went, and no one ever mentioned it again. There's very little to leak out outside of the processor. Really, all that changed in all these new devices is the processor. So you're right, there's less things for leakers to grab on and leak, especially supply chain side. But it's not always the supply chain that gets this information out. And I don't know. We can get into the actual products that released, like I said.
I'd like that. Yeah.
But I will say I miss the days of, Loves to Dream and stuff like that would just have these vague kind of conceptual posts on social media, and we could guess at what they're getting at, but they're trying not to burn their own sources. And it was kind of a cat and mouse game, and things slowly kind of uncovered over time if you knew where to look. Whereas now, the leaks seem to be like, we got a hold of this PDF of the event, and here's everything that's coming, and that's less useful because it's just you're right. It takes some of the excitement away, and I like it when we get to be excited again, and yeah. I know the people making these devices love it when they get to surprise us with new features.
Oh, well, I'm just thinking maybe Tim Cook has taken on the mantle of the teasing thing, because there's something in the air. We all, I mean, maybe we didn't all freeze frame like me, but we did all remember, if you have a long enough memory with Apple, that was how the first MacBook Air was announced on stage for it and things. He knew we'd know that. He knew we'd think about that. So that sounds the same as these previous leakers, just I guarantee Tim Cook's sources are first rate.
I don't know. I mean, I like this whole thing. Like I follow all the leakers pretty closely so we can keep an accuracy record. So I don't want it to go away, but in a way I want it to evolve. Just because we need to get back to the problem is these people are so desperate to be right that they because it gets them more attention, that they start saying very specific things. Like Gurman was so caught up on the order of releases which there's no way to predict that, because Apple can change that day to day if they feel like it. It doesn't matter when they announce it. But he was so caught up on that he kind of shot himself in the foot, right? Talking about iPhone SE4 coming after a MacBook Air, iPad Air coming before WWDC, and then Mac Studio, Mac Pro later in the summer. None of that matters. Release windows are less important, right? Talk more about the product, but because that's where you get the clout. But the problem is no one really knows anything about the product.
Well, I suppose now we all know about the product. I want to just prefix this thing by saying I am supremely tempted by the larger iPad Air, particularly in the blue colour. I don't know what it is with blue, but I'm really, really keen. However, is there an argument that we didn't need any of these updates this week at all?
No. I think that one's wrong too. I've seen people saying Apple's so boring. What are they doing in there? These types of complaints come out, I think, every year. I think Apple could literally announce a revolutionary new iPhone that's a circle made of liquid, and people would be like, "This is so boring." yeah, I don't know. Cynics are always going to be cynical, but these updates are great because it serves people who need to upgrade, right? If you have an iPad with an very old chip in it and you're looking at upgrading because it's starting to just fall apart, you've broken the screen, the battery doesn't last as long. I'm talking 5, 6, 7 year old iPad because that's how long people keep these things.
Mm.
Which makes more sense? Going into the store and buying the latest iPad Air with M2 from multiple years ago, right? I know the M2 iPad Air came out last year, but that M2 chip is aging. It's much older. So, or do you want at least an up-to-spec thing, right? You know the most expensive models have the latest chip, which is still M4. That's in the iPad Pro or in the MacBook Air. But you also know that the budget line, having the lower chip, is fine, but at least it's the next lowest chip. You're no longer worrying, well, and I know most consumers don't think this way, but at least they're getting the best they can get, and that's what's important. It's the people who buy everything new, right, who maybe have an M2 iPad Air and are only ever going to buy iPad Airs, who are disappointed by an M3 iPad Air because they're like, what's the point? Well, I'll tell you the point. Do you want better video games and graphics rendering on your iPad because you can get hardware accelerated ray tracing and mesh mapping in your iPad Air if you upgrade to the M3? Like, there's reasons. Storage tiers get cheaper. You might get a slight bump in certain speeds and certain aspects, but overall, there's almost always a reason. But is that reason good enough? And for M2 users, no, I would say not, unless you can get a really good trade-in deal. But overall, these upgrades are great for people who are buying these products. And the people that complain are generally the ones who are not buying these products. So,
I'm trying to remember when the original iPad Air came out. I know it was more than 10 years ago. I want to say 2013, because I actually won one for my wife Angela, and she's still using it. Actually, I bought one for myself as well afterwards, around the same time anyway. I loaned that to a family member a few years ago, and if they hadn't broken it, it would still be working really well. So iPads do last a long time.
absolutely. And they, generally it's good to hand them down the family. They just kind of work for a while as long as you don't try to break them in half. But yeah, it's a decent update. Nothing changed, literally, other than the chipset. You have the M3 processor. Great.
So what do you feel about the new Magic Trackpad? The new Magic Trackpad is specifically for the iPad Air, the 2 versions, and it's added a function key, it's added a larger trackpad. So actually, it's made it the way the last year's new Magic Keyboard was for the iPad Pro. Isn't this cutting the difference between the iPad Air and the iPad Pro more, especially because the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Air is now about $30 cheaper than it used to be?
It could have been more. The price reduction should have been more. The previous silicon-covered Magic keyboards they were for iPad Pro, but were compatible with iPad Air and had a large camera cutout. You could use it with the iPad Air, and that's fine, but they still cost the full price. This $30 difference is not enough. It should have been more like a $100 difference, and I understand material components being an issue, but does the iPad Air need the mechanism? What is that thing called? The cantilever mechanism?
It's called Beautiful. That's what it's called. Yeah.
And you're paying for that. Absolutely. I think honestly, the keyboard itself probably costs $12, and that cantilever is $300, right? Because you need it precisely balanced to hold the iPad in the air without any wiggle or anything like that. And it's great. It's a really good keyboard. And it's a really good design. And I'm glad they expanded the trackpad and added a function row and reduced the price by $30. All those are good things. Honestly, this keyboard could exist as an iPad Air keyboard, but they need a lower priced one. They really do. If Apple, I miss the keyboard folio. The original one without a trackpad, it could honestly survive today. Maybe with a tiny trackpad attached to it. Again, Go back to the old trackpad size. It was small, but it worked. And sell it for $200. It's just the thing costs almost. It's more than half of the iPad Air, and that's impressive for an accessory. It's a very good accessory, and I think people should get it, especially now that the cutout isn't looking ridiculous on the back. But people have complained, and I kind of agree. Why not just align the magnets in the new iPad Airs the same as the new iPad Pros, even though they're not thinner? But maybe that gets into internal interference because the whole system would need to be redesigned, and that defeats the purpose of the Air. So I get it, but this is a weird middle ground accessory.
You surprised me there with a bit about the cameras and complaints that I've never thought about the cameras. I have a 2021 11-inch iPad Pro and the Magic Keyboard case, and the cameras seem fine. I don't really think about it, but what I do think about is that here's this, I think, really nice case for it, this excellent keyboard for it, but it's a bit rubbish on protecting the corners of the iPad. Yeah, you drop it on a corner and it's not protected. Do we know if the new ones are any better in that way?
I mean, no. There's no... It's a magnetic back keyboard, so...
Okay.
Not really getting anything there. Now, there's other companies who make keyboard cases with removable components where you take the whole iPad off and it's in a case, and then you put it back on, and the case magnetically attaches to the keyboard. And that's a good option, and that's a much cheaper option. So it's a good thing third-party accessories exist because, again, I don't really understand the market of buying an iPad Air and Magic Keyboard when iPad Pro exists. How much money are you really saving at that point? But interesting nevertheless.
Well, it's still a few hundred, isn't it? I mean, that's why I said to you about the keyboard being the same as the Pro, that the difference is getting smaller. It seemed to me that last year Apple, I mean, what do I know, but it looked like Apple was expecting that the big differentiator between the Air and the iPad Pro was the OLED screen. Previously, to my eyes, the difference was that you had a larger screen on the Pro. That was taken away, and it doesn't look like the OLED thing was the roaring success that maybe was hoped for.
Yeah? The iPad Pro's always going to be the lowest seller because it's the most expensive. I think it sold well enough. It's who knows what analysts are saying, but I mean, I'm sure the people who are buying Pros are still buying Pros, and they're buying them at the same rate they always do. I don't think it like an increase in sales could have been possible because they're enticing features, but only the nerds are paying attention to that, and all of the nerds buy all the things all the time. So I don't know if that's a good metric to measure by, but I'm sure they're doing fine. But overall, there's many reasons why you should buy an iPad Pro over iPad Air, and why that price difference is worth it if you're willing to make the jump. If you have the money, just get it. It's better on very many fronts, right? OLED, ProMotion, nano texture option, Thunderbolt port, plus you get the better Magic Keyboard, the thinner, lighter design. It's just a much better system overall. Face ID as well, of course. So I don't like the arguments that people make of like, well, why bother with the iPad Pro? There's many features in iPad Pro that differentiate the two. They're very separated. But yeah, I'm glad to see iPad Air getting updated.
I want to talk about the MacBook Air things, but before we do that, let's go the other way. So rather than jumping from the Air to the Pro, the base iPad is, what, $250 cheaper than the iPad Air. It did get updated this year, but very confusingly, if you look at certain parts of the Apple website, it's called the iPad 11. You go to others, it's called the iPad 10th generation, 2nd edition, and things. It looks like there was... it's a shrug of an update, except it is the only new Apple device since, a year ago that doesn't support Apple Intelligence. And that did surprise me, but did it catch you by surprise as well?
A little, because, again, the rumors threw us off, but, reassessing it, especially with the iPhone 16e in existence, I think it makes sense. It's not great, but I think maybe at some level, Apple Intelligence could be considered a pro feature, or at least it's an advanced user feature. And it will eventually grow to be less of an advanced user feature as it takes over more and more of the system and becomes more just passive.
Hmm.
But right now, this is an education device, right? iPhone SE was not. iPhone SE could go away without too much worry and be replaced by a more expensive product. Apple can't do that with the base iPad, and they can't do that with the base MacBook Air either, but we'll get to that. The price is everything for this product, and perhaps Apple Intelligence was a step too far. They would be eating into their margins too much or even losing money moving to an A18 processor, or perhaps their supply chain is saturated on that processor. And it's hard to say why it took this long to get the A16 model. It should have probably come out last year, and it would have made more sense. Maybe people wouldn't have been as upset, and it would have given them a chance to move to A18 in the fall. But the thing is we're not going to see that. Apple Intelligence isn't coming to the base iPad for now until at least late 2026 is my guess. But it's not bad, not the end of the world, especially given what it is. If this is an education device, do we really want to introduce the education sector to all these tools anyway? ChatGPT and stuff built into the keyboard. I think that would be kind of funny. Maybe it would be turned off if it's an education sector device. But in any case, unnecessary. $329, I think, is the price, and that's where it is. And then you get that big discount if you're an education company buying it, or person. So yeah, price target all the way. It makes sense. I don't think there's any big loss without Apple Intelligence. And if that's a feature you really want, there's a huge market full of them. I mean, you can get an iPad Air with M1, right? Used, and it be not that much more expensive than the $329 iPad. So there's options out there for people.
One last thought about I call it a shrug of an update, but actually there was a significant thing that it now starts at 128 gigabytes instead of 64, and I thought 64 was just unsupportable. So, yay for that. Okay.
Finally, got rid of 64 gigs across all of Apple's ecosystem.
Yes,
and A16, it brings a few good performance updates, so it's a good tablet. And it still has that weird Apple Pencil support where it's USB-C or Gen 1 through a dongle. I believe that's probably going to change in a future update, but overall, not bad. I mean, this is the iPad I would buy for most casual users. It gets the job done.
This episode is brought to you by Oracle. Even if you think it's a bit overhyped, AI is suddenly everywhere, from self-driving cars to molecular medicine to business efficiency. If it's not in your industry yet, it is coming fast. But AI needs a lot of speed and computing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? Time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a blazing fast and secure platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, plus all your AI and machine learning workloads. OCI costs 50% less for compute and 80% less for networking, so you're saving a pile of money. Thousands of businesses have already upgraded to OCI, including Vodafone, Thomson Reuters, and Suno AI. Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. For new US customers with minimum financial commitment, offer ends March 31st. See if your company qualifies for this special offer at oracle.com/AppleInsider15. That's oracle.com/AppleInsider and the digits 15. And thank you to Oracle for their support of the Apple Insider podcast. Which brings us then to the other Air that there was something of in the Air. That was an ugly sentence, but there you go. The MacBook Air. That was the one we actually thought was coming. It was coming soon. It seems very nice. I mean, that's not really the strapline, is it? MacBook Air seems very nice. It's not, But is there more that you can say about that compared to the iPad Air update?
Well, no, M4, and that's it. It's the same product. They did ditch the I want to say space gray color. They're still midnight, so you still get that. You can still get a darker colored MacBook, but they traded space gray for blue, which I think you're excited about.
Oh, yes, sky blue. Yes, it looks great in the photos. Yeah.
Now,
No?
this is another gradient aluminum shell. So I saw the joke. The MacBook Air color spectrum is a warm slider, right? So you go from cool blue to warm rose, right? So that's pretty funny. And then silver's right in the middle. But no, I think the blue it's fine. If I bought a MacBook Air today, I would buy that color. It's
Yes.
more blue at certain angles and it's more silver at other angles. I don't mind that. I do wish Apple could give us more of a MacBook or an iMac color scheme on a MacBook Air. I'm sure that it has to do with chipping, right? If you colored a MacBook the same way you did an iMac, it would be a scratched up, devastating mess after a month just by taking it in and out of your backpack and rubbing it against zippers and stuff. I'm sure that coating just does not stand up to portable use, whereas sitting on a desk, dust isn't going to scratch it, I don't think. So, but otherwise, no, M4, great. We have almost the entire Mac lineup on the same processing family.
And the MacBook Air is a fractionally lower price than it was before. That's something I certainly didn't see coming.
M3 and M2 models are all discontinued. There's only an M4 MacBook Air for sale, and it is at that exact $999 price. And why did this happen, and why didn't this happen last year? Supply chain efficiency. I mean, they are getting better at making this new case. The case changed with the M2, and it was still expensive, so they kept the M1 model around. And then when the M3 model came out, M2 took over that slot at $999. And now here we are, M4. We've gotten far enough into the lifespan of this device that it is so efficient and easy to make that their margins are wide enough that they can charge $999 for the modern chipset, which is great.
I'd actually forgotten that they'd redesigned the case, which is particularly daft because right next to me I have an Intel MacBook Air, and I really liked that wedge shape it used to have. It was great for typing on, and I kind of miss that, but yeah.
So how much is the higher MacBook Air storage tier? $40,000?
Okay. I did a piece for AppleInsider about maxing out the MacBook Air, and I expected that this would be the same sort of thing we've seen before with everything, that it starts out at a nice, quite good price point. You could see Apple aiming for the 1,000, but that usually it's that one isn't adequate. You need something more, and the something more is an upgrade, and the upgrades are always extortionate, and they still are. Apple still charges more for every possible upgrade than any other manufacturer in the world, possibly all gathered together. But in this case, actually, there isn't an awful lot you can add to a MacBook Air. I maxed out the price at something like $2,100, but maybe $23 if you included Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro for it. So is Apple being reasonable, or is it just not offering us many options?
Well, yeah, you can't jack up that memory and storage as much. So 32 gig max, 2 terabyte max, and that lands you at $2,400 on the 15-inch. That's right. You're still basically, you can max out a MacBook Air for the price of a base MacBook Pro. That's where it lands. And you know what? That's how it should work. The MacBook Pro 14-inch, I believe, starts at $1,999, right? $2,000. And the maxed out 13-inch MacBook Air is $2,200. So not bad. And especially if you go with 1 terabyte of storage, which is probably plenty for a notebook, you're $400 cheaper. So $1,800 for a 13-inch MacBook with 32 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage, thin and light, lots of power, M4 modern processor. You really can't beat it. And you're coming in lower than that 14-inch MacBook Pro. That's how these upgrade pricing should always work.
Except that thing you said there about lighter. I used a couple of different people's, it would have been M2 MacBook Air, and I constantly was surprised at how light they were compared to my M1 MacBook Pro. And you would think that was a feature that would cost more. Lighter, thinner, should be more expensive, and yet it isn't.
Yeah. MacBook Air has always been a really good bargain. It's interesting. The low end of Apple's non-iPhone line is a really good bargain. The low end iPad is a powerful device. Yes, it doesn't come with Apple Intelligence, but it is a really good all-screen Touch ID, and it has a good camera and selfie camera with center stage. Has everything you could need out of a base iPad for half the cost of the next one up. So really good bargain there. Same with MacBook Air. Everything you could want out of a portable Mac, and it's thinner and lighter, much cheaper. So, and the next thing up is the Pro line, right? And it gets very expensive very fast. You can configure a MacBook Pro to $4,000 or something, and it's incredible. But I don't know. I think Apple really hit. This is another example of Tim Cook's efficiency, just stepping in. These low end models just really hit strong. Once it's adding in those displays that really ups the pricing game.
Oh, funny you said it, because I was thinking, I would have argued that the MacBook Air is like the sweet spot in the Mac range, except there is the Mac Mini, although you have to then go buy displays and things like that. It still works out cheaper getting a Mac Mini than any Mac laptop, but maybe not that much anymore with the new price drop.
Given how long we've had the Studio Display and Magic accessories, once you have the base set of accessories, swapping out the Mac Mini is the cheapest option in the entire Apple ecosystem, because you're only buying those accessories once every decade.
But actually, that brings me to something else. Sorry, my mind's going, because I've really been quite tempted by the new, even though all the devices this week have been kind of shrug updates, I suppose, I've still been tempted by them. But one of the things that hadn't occurred to me as being important is an actual improvement in the MacBook Air, that it can now drive two monitors and with its own screen as well. So apparently in the last version, to get two external monitors, you had to close the lid on it, which didn't seem like a massive deal, but it does seem better to be able to have three screens open.
This is a result of the M4 family. They've done this across the line, which is great. They've finally improved on that.
So it came in the Mac Mini, didn't it? And that was...
Yeah, Mac Mini has a pretty robust display support. I think it's 3 monitors if you use 2 Thunderbolt and 1 HDMI, but I'd have to check that.
Right. I do actually get a bit mixed up over what can be driven at what size and what's refresh rate and all this. But given that I actually have quite a wide monitor, I never plug my MacBook Pro into it. I just leave the Mac Mini in there. Maybe I'm missing a trick with that. But I've got universal control. I can go between all of these.
I'm pretty happy with my one display. I understand people with multiple displays, and I wonder if Apple ever added multiple display support to iPads, if I would bother. I probably would, just to see, but I don't know. Even in Vision Pro, I can only look at one thing at a time. So I don't get more eyes the more displays that I add,
I would say my thing against multiple displays is that I can't stand the borders. When you've got 2 monitors side by side, I just keep focusing on the 2 black bezels in the middle, forward to the silver bezels, whatever they are. But I mean, right at this moment, I'm looking at 14-inch MacBook Pro on my desk, but next to me is a 49-inch widescreen, and it has bits and pieces to do with this podcast on. So I suppose I'm looking back and forth for it, but I just don't like the inefficiency in a way of having multiple screens to.
Speaking of product upgrades, I wanted to mention here Mac Studio. Right, but before we get to that, Mac Mini, we were pretty down on Mac Mini's storage pricing. It's identical to the MacBook Air, so why are we talking differently versus the two? Maybe Apple's just programming us to get used to these extremely high storage prices.
And I think we're just awkward. That's it. We're never happy. Whatever happens, that's what it is.
Looking at this, the maxed out Mac Mini comes out to $18.99, which is $100 cheaper than the base Mac Studio, which again, I think makes the most sense. You should get to the bottom of the next tier by maxing out a product. And yes, these prices are still exorbitant. Like this is a lot of money to pay for storage, especially you should not be paying $400 for 1 terabyte. That's incredible. But you're getting unified memory, which is different from just going to Best Buy and buying a 2 terabyte external SSD, right? And those external SSDs, yes, they're in the 180 to 250 range for 2 terabytes these days, and you get very fast speeds, but they're still not Thunderbolt. If you buy a Thunderbolt 2 terabyte drive to get even more connectivity, which is still slower than the unified memory. William, pop quiz. How fast is the unified memory on an M4 chip?
Oh, I know the answer to this. Very. Yeah.
So I had this, and it's not in front of me this second, but it's somewhere around 200 or 300 gigabytes per second, big B. And you go to, I know this one because I was writing about it. M4 Max is 576 gigabytes per second.
I can't even type that fast.
M3 Ultra is 800 gigabytes per second, right? And Thunderbolt, 40 gigabits per second. So it's a big difference. Unified memory is expensive and it is fast. Even if you throw all the Thunderbolt you can at these things, you will never match that internal memory. So I understand people saying just buy external. It's not the same. But for most people, it effectively is. But if you need that unified memory, if you need that speed, rendering and all these things with memory or working from the device to edit video in real time, you're editing 8K multiple tier video in Final Cut, yeah, you're going to want that unified memory. So as expensive as Apple storage is, it kind of makes sense.
My problem with all of this is you tell me the speed of the right speed, and it sounds incredible, but I don't really have a feel for any specification, what it will actually do for me, what it will change. So I am drawn to the new Mac Studio for it, mostly because my Mac Mini is now 5 years old and I've had the odd, oh, come on moment from it. But I can't look at the specifications and feel confident that it's twice as fast or something, or that I'm going to appreciably notice things. And that's making me hesitate over spending an awful lot of money in case I just don't feel the difference.
Well, it'd be like me trying to sell you a car that could go the speed of light. You understand that I'm telling you that it's fast, but you have no idea what that actually would feel like or look like, or how, when would you be able to go that speed? Because even if it could go the speed of light in 0.5 seconds, you're still going to go 40 miles per hour. So, and I think that's the problem with a lot of these very fast SSD max speeds. We've hit the consumer bottleneck. What are people doing? They're browsing media. And do you really need 400 gigaflops or whatever of power to open Facebook? Maybe you do because it's such an inefficient garbage website, but still, it's one of those things that we as consumers are in the best position we've ever been buying computers, where the base iPad, the base MacBook, even the base desktop Mac are all more powerful than our needs could ever be until you get to more professional settings. And that's incredible.
Just over the years, I've tended to try to buy the more expensive machine on the presumption that it will last me longer. And generally speaking, that's been true. I mean, 5 years for the Mac Mini is quite on the low side for me, but it's still a lot of money to pay out in one go. So
I remember having a Windows, I want to say Dell computer in like 2004, and I was trying to get Red Alert 2 to install on it, and it kept crashing. This real-time strategy game with like 2D pixel art was crashing the system. And it could run a pinball game in solitaire fine. So that was the level of bad we were dealing with back then. Of course, that was computing power that we had, but it's just one of those things where consumers back in the day really had to think about it. You go in there and get those Inspiron and Intelli, whatever cow processors that they have, and go buy your gateway from Walmart, and you have no idea what you're getting into because the 15 different options didn't make any sense. They all had these funny names with marketing that was built to confuse consumers. And today you just walk in and say, I want that one in the nice blue color, and take it home, and it works. And you don't even have to even know anything about it. You don't have to know that this thing has an A16 processor. It's nonsense. This episode is brought to you by Factor, a microwavable meal that is gourmet-style food that you can have ready to eat in around 2 minutes. They've got a lot of great options that cover 8 dietary preferences across 40 different plates. You can choose between things like the keto meal diet. You can get Chef's Choice, where basically you can get anything that is chosen by the chef. It's in the name. It's a lot of good food. I enjoyed everything they sent over. They sent a lot of different dietary options because I don't really have any restrictions. They sent some vegetarian options, meat-heavy ones, just really ran the gamut of food. And honestly, some of the vegetarian plates were my favorites. There was this like peanut infused like asparagus thing that was just awesome. The spicy sweet potatoes and peanut sauce, also got a shout out to that. They also included these cold pressed juices that paired with everything really well. I just grabbed one every time I grabbed a meal. They had like apple and carrot, different infusions of things like that. Really healthy. I use these food tracking apps to keep track of everything, and I scanned everything in, and it just really was noticeably well-balanced meals. You don't really go away eating these things bloated or overeaten or anything like that. Just makes you feel fueled up and ready for the day. So, eat smart with Factor. You can get started with factormeals.com/AppleInsider50 off. That's factormeals.com AppleInsider50 off. And use the code AppleInsider50 off to get the 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That code, AppleInsider50 off at factormeals.com/AppleInsider50 off to get the 50% off plus free shipping for your first box. And thanks to Factor for sponsoring Apple Insider Podcast.
When I first started out on computer magazines, and I can't remember what it would have been, somewhere in the 90s, there's a company in the UK called Amstrad, and it got a roasting in the technology press because it was selling PCs that were based on last year and the year before's technology. But that was good enough for its customers, and it sold a fortune of them, and actually introduced PCs to a lot of people at the time. So I still think there's a bias in us once you use this stuff a lot to want the best thing for it, and
a lot of people, a lot of people in tech, be it writers, YouTubers, or the people that consume this information, the nerds who are passionate, which is great because I'm also a passionate nerd that consumes this content. They tend to forget that there are other people in the world who just don't care. They don't know.
Yes.
They don't care. They just want it to work. And that's the thing about Apple. I know it's a joke at this point, but it really does just work.
I saw this great quote from Johnny Ive the other day. It's quite a lot of quote. It's for when Apple Park opened, and I must have missed this. Apparently, a lot of people were criticising Apple Park for various things. And he said, well, it's fine to criticise our products, but it's absurd to criticise Apple Park because we didn't make it for you. We made it for us, so we know how we work and all this kind of thing. I thought that was terribly insightful. Yeah.
The trash cans and the glass and the no handles on the doors and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, when are you going to be in that building, dude? But maybe a little over-designed. But speaking of over-design, I'm joking. The Mac Studio is it's pretty great. I mean, I like this computer if I needed it. I mean, I barely need the Mac Mini. So if I was doing intensive editing, graphics, or video stuff, this would be probably my go-to computer. And it looks cute. It has a little SD slot on the front that makes it look like it has a face. Kind of reminds me of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy computer.
Okay. the guide itself. Oh, you're thinking of Marvin the Paranoid Android. Yes, his
No, no,
face.
no, no, no. The thinker.
There was Eddie. Oh, yes, yes, goodness. That came up with the answer 42.
Yes, yes.
Okay. God, I'd forgotten that. Okay. Because I started with the radio version, you see.
Of
You're one of
course.
these TV
You
people.
had to imagine it. Yeah.
But you just called the Mac Studio cute. And I have to tell you, I went into an Apple store explicitly to see the M4 Mac Mini when that came out. And yes, it was even smaller than it looked in the pictures, but right next to it was a Mac Studio that looked even bigger than in the pictures. It's a huge, tiny thing, isn't it?
I know we're being nostalgic in this episode, but I'm still thinking back to those tower computers that weighed like 80 pounds.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's just,
Yes.
whenever someone calls something big or small today, I think of those inferences and it's just like, you have no idea. Like Mac Studio is cute, especially even today's desktop computers, right? Have you seen some of these like water cooled towers filled with neon lights and
Yes.
glass doors?
Yes.
And they're pretty to look at. I'm sure they do stuff. Yeah, it's definitely a taste, of course, but an acquired taste. But yeah, this by comparison is diminutive, and I know it's not a gaming PC, but it runs games, right? It's not running them at 8K, ultra wide, whatever fandangled nonsense, but it turns on and plays them anyway. It's running them on the same level, I would say, as probably a previous generation console, which is, again, fine for the people who are buying this thing not for gaming. But just always funny to see Apple come out with this and then ignore the Mac Pro. But we'll get to that in a second. Mac
Yes.
Studio, what do you think of this processor thing going on?
I was surprised because in my little brain that doesn't understand specifications, M4 must be better than M3, and in this case, it isn't. But okay, the next thing I did was I look at the prices, and I thought, yeah, I actually am tempted by the lower end of the Mac Studio. I'm never going to come anywhere near the high end for it. So I was able to dismiss it from my mind quite easily. But were you taken aback by Apple's strange numbering system?
No, I mean, it works. It's all a spec game, and naming is always dumb. They could call the chips Bingo and Bongo. It doesn't matter. What matters is what they give you, and the M4 Max to the M3 Ultra gives you the same thing as the M2 Max to the M2 Ultra. It essentially doubles the performance. It increases the bandwidth for the unified memory. It allows for a lot more RAM. In this case, more than twice as much, I think, because you can get up to 512 gigabytes of RAM, which is incredible. So that's more than some people have storage in their devices.
Yes.
Which is just, again, and then 16 terabytes internally. This thing can be configured up to, what is it, some ungodly number.
Oh, I could, if you're talking dollars and cents, I could take it to about $14,000 when I was looking through it. Yeah, but I wasn't really sure what that all got me. I mean, it would do. I'd be okay with that. So I'd get by day to day with that amount of RAM. Yeah.
People have asked the question, why not M4 Ultra? It's the more efficient to build 3 nanometer process, right? The second generation 3 nanometer process. Apple prefers M4 over M3. Here's the thing. M3 may be less efficient to build. It may be the undesirable process at the moment that as Apple phased out almost the minute that it announced it, but it is still less expensive to produce overall because it is a lower end chipset. And lower end at a different package level with less transistors and all that makes it easier to produce, makes it the yields be higher, and just, yeah, it's all about price. It's all about money. The M4 Ultra would be incredible performance. We're talking, it would be a leap 2 years in advance, but you'd be paying 2 years in advance prices. And I think that's why the M3 Ultra took so long, is because if it had released in 2022, it would have been 2 years in advance processing speeds. This is one of the most powerful consumer products in existence right now. outside of like these server-sized chips that could fit in your bedroom. It's interesting that it took them this long to get it to this price and this efficiency, but that doesn't go against the idea that the M3 is an undesirable process. The same thing for the iPad Air. They built up backstock inventory. They've made the chips that they want, and now the fabs are producing M4s. Those are all true. The M3 Ultra has probably been made in a sizable production range, enough to sell to the expectations that they have for the Mac Studio at that price. They don't need to make that many. So I understand the confusion, but it's still, all of the things that we've mentioned before still make sense if you examine it properly. But I don't know. I'm not against it. It makes sense. Apple also released this note saying not every generation is going to get an Ultra chip, which is ominous for the M4. So in any case, it's just another chipset bump. We went from M2 Max to M4 Max, correct? Or did I skip? No. Did we have an M3 Max Studio?
What color was it? Sorry, that really is. I'm not proud of this, but it is the way my mind works. Well, not necessarily colours and stuff, but I don't keep track of all this. But actually, something that occurs to me is we have discussed everything now that Apple's released this week, but we have not discussed the big one that they haven't, which is the Mac Pro. I mean, you're edging towards this. Yes. What is the point of the Mac Pro when the Mac Studio is this fast?
Well, this is what I was getting at. Mac Studio got the chipset update, the same, bump that every other product got in these announcements. It's just a little bit more confusing because the nomenclature confused people. But it's still a chip bump. It's still more powerful. But why wasn't the Mac Pro included in this announcement? Two things. They sell even less of those. It's very expensive. Yes. And there's some rumors. I've seen people discussing this going back pretty far. There was when they were discussing the possibility of an M4 and an M3 appearing in a Mac Studio. At the same time, they were discussing the Mac Pro having an M4 series chip, but being redesigned. So Apple could be working on a Mac Pro that would be announced during WWDC this year with a chip they probably won't call M4 Ultra, but a specialized high-end Pro chip, like whatever Apple decides to call it, that would be more powerful even than M3 Ultra, and it would only be available in Mac Pro, period. And it would be based on the M4 architecture and that second generation 3nm process. It would probably be kind of like putting two M4 Maxes together, but it's going to have some special sauce thrown in to make it even more powerful and interesting for the Mac Pro people. And I think that's why it's missing, and it's going to be a very interesting WWDC.
You do realise we nearly made it to the end of an entire episode without talking about any rumours coming up, and yet in the last moments you had to come up with that one. Yes, can't disagree with it, but WWDC to me is software, so we'll see what happens there.
Perhaps we'll finally get that Mac Pro with external graphics support, and they have to build a special chipset to do that. Who knows?
Well, actually, how about this? Last thing I want to talk to you about is software related, because iOS 18.4 continues to be out in various developer betas. Still hasn't got the Siri improvements. Sounds like it's not going to get the Siri improvements. But there is a nice thing now. I was showing my wife Angela visual intelligence because I'm really keen on this. And it got to the point where, maybe to shut me up, I'm suddenly not sure, she asked how you do it on her phone. She has a, would it be iPhone 15 Pro, something like that, which doesn't have an action button. No, it doesn't have the camera control button.
Yes.
And I didn't know, but as of now, as of this developer beta, visual intelligence is available on the action button, is available in Control Center. Aren't those two choices actually better than it being on the camera control switch?
Currently, it feels hidden.
Yeah.
It's if you know it's there, it's a good place for it. Because if you know it's there and you press and hold that button, it's a launcher that takes you there no matter where you are in the system. Great. How many people know it's there? And on devices with Apple Intelligence capable of running visual intelligence, there's no reason for them to not have it. So I'm glad that it's there. And I wonder if I could go in my phone, I think you can, turn it off on the camera control and then put it in Control Center, right? Just move the functionality elsewhere. Heck, run it on the action button, right? Because I believe that's an option even for the people
it is.
camera control. Or you could just turn it on everywhere and have 6 different places to launch visual intelligence. But interesting. I'm glad that they're doing this. That this goes against people. People used to get so mad at Apple gatekeeping certain things that had nothing to do with performance from devices that could definitely run it. And this is an example of one they could have kept to the iPhone 16, but I'm glad they didn't.
I wish they'd just fix the action button. I mean, I've said this before. You have to press and hold on the action button to get it to do anything. But if you don't press and hold, if you just press it, it registers that you've pressed it. So why not put a function on there? Just the way with camera control, you get different things depending on how long you press. But, I don't know that you can switch it off on the camera control, but I know, because I tried it, you can add it to the action button and to Control Center. I might well swap to that for it, but I am overloading my action button at the moment.
So we discussed it before. iOS 18.4 was meant to have a Siri upgrade, and it is probably pushed back to an 18.5. I think these are the reasons why. This is what's annoying about rumors and why people's reactions tend to be wrong, is because it's like, oh, they delayed it again. They delayed a product nobody knew was coming. It was always rumored that it was going to be coming in the spring of 2025, before WWDC. That was our release window. 18.4 was a estimated guess, not a fact. Apple never said it was coming in 18.4. Rumors put it in 18.4. But it turns out Apple needed to use the 18.4 version to get these visual intelligence updates, Apple Vision Pro updates that we're going to get to, out. And so 18.5 has now become the app intent version. And maybe they need a little more time, whatever. But you know what time of year it is right now, William? Not spring. So I know this is all due in early April, which is getting closer to that spring window, but I still don't think it counts as quote-unquote spring. 18.5, I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be a mid-May release, and we'll have these app intent systems, and we'll get them anyway. But it's always fun to see what people think is on time, ahead, or behind based on rumor, which, again, is not official. So I don't mind that this release has these things, because they have some cool stuff. Apple Vision Pro has a whole app on your iPhone now.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Yes, and that's out and you've used it.
Yes, it's lackluster at launch. It works a little bit like the App Store Stories section, where you can scroll through a feed of information. It kind of pairs with the spatial gallery in a way, and I'm sure Apple's going to add more to the Vision Pro app as time allows. This again is a beta where it first appeared, so this is the first version with nothing in it, only for beta testers to tinker with. But you can go in and see, hey, there's this Severance behind the scenes thing, star it, and then go to your Vision Pro, open the spatial gallery, and it's in your favorite section for you to view. So that's nice. So you can pre-plan content from your phone to view in your Vision Pro.
Okay.
And it gives you ideas. Like, I went through the spatial gallery. There's a lot there already. Now, it's very short, very sweet. Little videos that were clearly filmed on iPhone using spatial recording. Behind the scenes photos, 3D photos, panoramas that you just scroll through with this really magnificent interface. Honestly, they did a really good job with the interface. You'll have to go back to an Apple store and try it out, I guess, when it releases.
And that's just exactly what I was thinking there. Go back to an Apple store and try very hard not to pick up a Mac Studio. Listen, while I genuinely am trying to resist at the moment, I was going to ask you where people can reach you, but people have been reaching you. You have some reviews for us this week, don't you?
So as we get to the close, I want to mention I'm on Blue Sky, active, Mastodon dormant, but the account's still there. And you can always email me, as always, Wes@AppleInsider.com, found at the top of any article I've written. You can do the same for William, for as far as email goes. But just a brief mention, Blue Sky is getting a new client from the makers of Tweetbot, Tapbots. They're going to be making an app called Phoenix, which I'm very excited for. Everyone, if you aren't already haven't used Tweetbot in the past or Ivory now for Mastodon, I'm sure you'll know that this is going to be a very exciting release. It should be a very well-made app, and I'm happy to support them. If you're not using Ivory and you are on Mastodon, I recommend go and download that client, give it a try, and if you like it, give them some money. It's a really good app. But Phoenix will be coming in the summer, and it's neat because a phoenix rises from the ashes, and Tweetbot, being a bird, right?
Okay, yes.
And then Blue Sky being a creation of Jack Dorsey, who also helped co-found Twitter. It's as if Twitter is rising from the ashes in Blue Sky with the app Phoenix, right? So that's what they're going for. It's clever. They could have gone with something else, a different metaphor, but I like this one. And it'll be fun because they offer a lot of really cool custom icons and ways to customize the timelines and stuff. So everyone keep an eye on that. And to get to your point, we've got a few reviews this week I wanted to point out. Keep up the good work, guys. Good reviews. So first we have DubZXN. They said that they hope this gets to you guys. They don't understand the people who are lurking and hating, but thank you for everything you guys do. They appreciate it. Love the podcast. 100% support and agree with your takes. And not every listener is a hater. So thanks for that review. We got one that says, great show from Klishak22. I love wrapping up my week with this show. Then I start my week with HomeKit Insider. So again, thank you for listening to both of those shows. Sometimes you'll hear me on HomeKit Insider as well with Andrew. It's a fun one.
Excellent. And
we got one more, just a 1-star from a numeric person. Listen, dog. If I wanted to hear politics, there are plenty of other better places to do that. I agree. There are better places to hear politics. We're not talking about politics. We're talking about tech. I just want to point out again, in a world filled with tech, politics get involved. There's regulations. When we talk about the EU and how silly it is that they have this regulation, or the UK wanting a backdoor, we don't get these reviews. But we do get these reviews when we talk about an unfair regulation in some other countries. Wink, wink. But thanks for the review. And as we've said before, we're trying to package some of the more unpleasant news into a section called Controversy Corner. If you notice this week, we didn't have it because there was nothing to talk about. So, yeah, keep that in mind. Hope you guys keep listening. Keep leaving those reviews, good or bad. We're happy to see them and review them on the show, as long as they're not personal attacks against us. But, yes, Apple Podcasts, leave those reviews. We'll check them there. If you're leaving reviews in other podcast app, I won't see them. But we do appreciate it either way. If you're in Overcast, you can always leave a star. That helps us rank there too. William, I will hush now so we can close up the show.
Well, I just thought actually there's one thing I have not mentioned that is far, far more important than any Apple news, is the fact that if you're an Apple Insider Plus subscriber in a few moments, we're now going to be talking about trading in, the various ways to do it, the various problems with doing it when you want to buy new gear and you're trying to save some cash along the way. App Insider Plus, though, it's the ad-free extended version, which you get if you subscribe through Apple Podcast subscriptions or join us on Patreon. Either way of which, it would be a treat to have you, and I hope you can join us sometime. But in the meantime, that's it for this regular edition of the Apple Insider Podcast. But if you wait for just a moment, we'll be back with more. So in the meantime, thank you very much for listening. Thanks, Wes. Good talking to you. And thank you to our sponsors, Oracle and Factor. And we'll be back next week.
Yep. Talk then.